Hi, this is Jack Hicko. I'll be providing the commentary for this new Millennium digitally remastered edition of Docta Ignorantia, which was originally released in 1982, as I recall. Docta Ignorantia was the name of a story that was being read by Ed Williamson, and it was related to the coincidence of genius and ignorance, which described exactly what Mark Secunda was, although no one could figure out what he was a genius of exactly. The two friends of mine that made this film, Dan Holt and Ed Williamson, uh, were living in St. Louis at the time and had come from the same suburb of Chicago where they had had a little reptile and fish club. And many years later, they ran into each other in St. Louis, Missouri, and lived just a few blocks apart and worked just a few blocks apart. And they decided to make a film to commemorate that strange coincidence. So they asked me if I knew a potential subject, and I thought, okay, there is this weird guy, Mark Secunda. I think if you took his weirdness and just made it into a more understandable story, it might actually be interesting. Anyway, here's Barnes Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri. This is the Oscar Johnson Institute attached next to it. Ed worked at this place. Here's a little laboratory he worked in. When you get a degree in physiology, you do one of two things. You either go kill laboratory rats, or you handle the radioactive materials as we see here. We tried to get a video image of I Love Lucy plugged into that little TV screen right there, but couldn't quite figure that out. Here's Mark Secunda. These were shot on a series of Sundays in spring of 1982, very early Sunday morning through mid-afternoon. The lab coat, we went to a little uniform supply, bought that little lab coat. Mark had recorded his entire life as a series of audio cassettes, and this part of the film was to reflect that aspect of Mark Secunda. His entire life had been on audio cassettes in the form of funny little radio shows, some of which you can hear elsewhere on YouTube. The dream sequence shot one of the later Sundays. So Mark is wearing the fake beard for this scene. And here he is actually doing one of his recordings, which is very typical of Mark. He would constantly record funny little radio skits and sketches. This $10 item right here we bought at the office, or the uniform supply company where we got the jacket. Ed actually had a lot of jackets from working here, but they were covered in stains, and we needed something a little more presentable for this. This scene has Mark just dabbling with his little experiments, a few establishing shots of what Mark does for a living, working in the laboratory, but also his inadvertent lack of attention, accidentally dropping things into his coffee. It looks actually fairly deliberate. Mark was not a great actor. This was Ed's cup. Here comes the famous Kevin Martin. You can see him also in the TV series Sound Waves with Kevin Martin, also here on YouTube. Here he is playing the concerned co-worker who's tired of Ignatz Ignorantia, Mark Secunda. These are my hands, by the way. I was the only one who could actually draw a graph that looked like something. Yeah, you won't see Secunda doing that. Kevin was available one Sunday, and so plays the part of the frustrated coworker. Now, this shot was quite an elaborate. Oh, I guess we already saw the broken glass scene. So Mark's still wearing the beard, and Kevin just reacting kind of strangely. Kevin was not available for the soundtrack a few months later, and you actually hear my voice dubbed in for Kevin's. Does anyone understand the research he is doing? Actually, that's a scene coming up, but that's the voice I used for Kevin Martin there. Oh. All right, here's this actually is Ed Williamson here. And Mark comes in looking for labware, but Ed's not going to give him any because Mark breaks it faster than they can even get it in. But Mark sees some that just arrived, but Ed's not going to let him touch that. That's just not worth even taken a chance on. Now here, uh, Dan Holt's wife provided the voice of the Nancy Darish character here, and I provided the voice of the Kevin Martin character. Does anyone understand the research he is doing? He must be doing something. He works hard enough. This part, the sound's not very tight on this part, and it's hoped that the new digital soundtrack will correct some of the muddiness of this part of the original soundtrack. This next little sequence is very much like the life of Mark Secunda. This is coming out of Barnes Hospital, or the Oscar Johnson Institute, which is more on the Euclid Avenue side of Barnes Hospital. Mark frequently would miss buses, try to cross an icy pond and fall in. A series of misfortunes would always happen to him. You should, watch the video. Do you know who I am? And he'll explain some of this. But missing the bus, very much in line with Mark's life. That's the west end of St. Louis right there.